As one gets older, or in my case, very much older, the occasional regret creeps in. One of mine is that I never learned to speak another language. However, I learned a Latin word recently, murmuratio. Murmuratio, which sounds better than its English meaning, grumbling. In the 6th century, Benedict wrote a rule for monks that incorporated Jesus' approach to conflict resolution. He was also at pains to avoid murmuratio, grumbling, which he knew could undermine any community. We can recall, I'm sure, those Israelites wandering around in the desert, moaning at Moses. We would have been better off staying in Egypt, at least we had food. And how so quickly the negative rumblings went viral. We have been given a difficult Bible passage today from the book of Matthew, chapter 18. Basically, it is Jesus' take on conflict resolution, and we all know how challenging that can be. And Avril will read it for us.
If another member of the church sins against you, go and point out the fault when the two of you are alone. If the member listens to you, you have regained that one. But if you are not listened to, take one or two others along with you, so that every word may be confirmed by the evidence of 2 or 3 witnesses. If the member refuses to listen to them, tell it to the church. And if the offender refuses to listen even to the church, let such a one be to you as a Gentile and a tax collector. Truly, I tell you, whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven. Again, truly, I tell you, if 2 of you agree on earth about anything you ask, it will be done for you by my Father in heaven. For where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, I am there among them.
It would be difficult to exaggerate the importance Jesus placed on the quality of his disciples' relationships with one another. His longing and prayer was that the love and unity he experienced with the Father would be mirrored in their fellowship with one another and be one of their defining characteristics. Always the realist, he provided clear, practical, step-by-step guidance on how to deal with friction and dispute within Christian communities. And I think it's helpful to read these instructions alongside Jesus' response to Peter's question recorded later in the chapter. Peter said, "Lord, if another member of the church sins against me, how often should I forgive? As many as 7 times? Not 7 times, but I tell you, 77 times. How fortunate we are to be given guidance by Jesus on conflict resolution. Go to the person alone. Only if there is no resolution do we get a few others involved. In this approach, we hear the view of the other person and perhaps realise that the fault lies not with them, but with us. Or more often, with a combination of people and misunderstandings. Wisdom comes in honouring the position of the other person and avoiding gossiping and point scoring. Reconciliation is at the very heart of Christianity. And yet we do get upset by others. What do we do with the hurt? I am sure most of us have experienced this and know full well what happens if we allow ourselves to keep the hurt locked up within and brood. Or do we allow ourselves to face up to the person and voice our annoyance, our anger and hurt? To tell or not to tell, that is the question. There is a poem by William Blake, A Poison Tree, which imaginatively explores this problem. I was angry with my friend. I told my wrath did end. I was angry with my foe. I told it not, my wrath did grow. And the poem continues with anger towards the foe being fed and watered by the poet's emotions, so that it grows into a beautiful tree with poisoned apples, which eventually kill the enemy. The moral is that unvoiced anger and hurt can do deep, lasting and permanent damage. In fact, refusal to face up to your anger and hurt ends up as the refusal to love. As I said in my introduction, today's reading is tough and not easy to follow. But with grace and truth, we approach each other with care, trusting that our halting efforts at giving voice to our hurt will be accepted in the best spirit. It may not work, but it's better than planting a fatal orchard with our anger. Jesus advocates straightening things out with each other privately, if at all possible. No anonymous complaints to the authorities, no whisper campaigns, and no running away from the fellowship. The purpose of confronting another who has wronged you is not to humiliate them, but to be reconciled. It's an honest attempt to avoid the poison tree springing up between Christians. The response for Jesus and for Benedict is attentiveness. If someone upsets you, don't gossip about them, but instead make time and space for them. Listen, understand, and respond with love. If finally you have to acknowledge a broken relationship, you can do so knowing you worked for peace and reconciliation. Hopefully, it will not come to that. For us Christians, we can begin the process of healing, trusting that where 2 or 3 are gathered, Jesus is there too, and that in God all things are possible.